Pilgrim, you caused a lot of trouble this morning. Might have got somebody killed. And somebody ought to belt you in the mouth. But I won't. I won't. The hell I won't.
John Wayne, not merely a Hollywood superstar, but a symbol of America itself. Wayne was more than the sum of his movies, many of which were memorable only for his presence. Whether swatting enemy fighters or battling with war-painted Apache, Wayne was always a huge screen version of, well, John Wayne. Even in old age, he seemed indestructible.
I mean to kill you in 1 minute, Ned, or see you hanged in Fort Smith at Judge Parker's convenience. Which'll it be?
I call that bold talk for a one-eyed Batman.
Not much.
But there was more to Wayne than the macho posturing of an action movie star. He could be harsh and arrogant, but at his best, and in the hands of a great director like Howard Hawks or John Ford, Wayne was an actor whose mere presence on the screen breathed life into many a movie. In the 1930s, the presence of Marlene Dietrich on the screen was a celebration of self-possessed, tantalizing womanhood, a challenge to any man.
I was really afraid.
Of what?
Of you.
But I didn't do anything.
But you intended to.
I did not.
You had it in your eye.
I didn't know it showed.
Do you expect to stay in Shanghai for a while?
I don't know.
Then we ought to see each other a lot.
Perhaps.
Dietrich's name evokes the quintessence of female enchantment. Studio portraits preserve her as one of this century's greatest icons of cosmopolitan glamour and sexual allure. And some of these studio stills also hint at the affair Marlene Dietrich had with John Wayne in the early 40s. They were unlikely co-stars and unlikely lovers, but it was a passionate romance. John Wayne was born Marion Michael Morrison in Winterset, Iowa in 1907. As a child, he moved west with his family to California. After a football scholarship at the University of California and an injury which curtailed his sports career, young Marion Morrison, universally known as Duke, got a job as a prop man at the Fox studio with the help of cowboy star Tom Mix. The first movie he worked on was Mother McCree, directed by John Ford. It was the start of a lifelong friendship with Ford. And it was Ford who gave Marion Morrison his first big acting break, persuading director Raoul Walsh to star his protege, now renamed John Wayne, in a widescreen spectacular, The Big Trail. The Big Trail was a big flop, and relegated Wayne to years of low-budget movies. He was a pilot in the 1932 mascot serial, The Hurricane Express.
What are you doing? I'm going to try and sidetrack one of those trains. You can't make a landing here. You crash up the plane. I've got to take that chance. We can't let those trains crash.
But it was as a cowboy hero that Wayne became most familiar to moviegoers. He was tall, good-looking, and broad-shouldered.
Saunders, you've interfered in my business once too often. Now I'm giving you just 1 minute to get out of town.
Wayne wasn't required to act much. But his distinctive, rangy walk was already well-oiled. Wayne rode the range at Monogram, and later the Republic Studio. During the 30s, he made something like 100 movies, mostly as a star of matinee westerns. He even tried his hand as a singing cowboy. But in 1939, John Ford insisted that Wayne was cast as the Ringo Kid in Republic's Stagecoach. Stagecoach was to revitalize the fortunes of the Western.
Hey, Curly! Why don't you take the cuffs off the kid? He's mighty handy with the gun.
You drive them horses. I'll take care of the kid.
You talk too much, Gatewood.
Don't switch, don't phase.
Take it easy, Gatewood. We may need that fighting before we get to the ferry.
You wouldn't be much good in a fight, you jailbird.
Oh, leave the kid alone. He's handcuffed.
And Stagecoach also revitalized the stalled career of John Wayne. Wayne had shot from B-movie range warbling to stardom. And soon he was set to tangle with something hotter to handle than Apache war parties, Marlene Dietrich. It was an irony that just as John Wayne's star in Hollywood was on the rise, Marlene Dietrich's was about to fall. In contrast to Wayne, Dietrich had reigned as the queen of the great indoors. Even in Morocco, she wore a slinky evening dress to pursue Foreign Legionnaire Gary Cooper into the Sahara. Her great partnership with director Joseph von Sternberg had transformed a dumpy Berlin Hausfrau into the most magical face and haunting voice of the early sound era. And the legs weren't bad either. But when Sternberg left, it seemed as if in other hands Dietrich became a caricature, like a brilliant female impersonator acting out a Dietrich role rather than the woman herself. Marlene Dietrich was born in Berlin in 1901. Always coy about her real age, Dietrich later glossed over her early career in Germany on the stage and in movies. It was only in 1930 that director Joseph von Sternberg fashioned Dietrich into a star in The Blue Angel, made in her native Germany. When she sang Falling in Love Again, critic James Agate wrote, "Reason tottered on its throne." The Paramount Studios signed Dietrich and brought her to Hollywood with her husband, Rudolf Sieber, and daughter. Dietrich was the latest in a long line of continental imports to Hollywood. By no means all of these exotic plants had taken root in Tinseltown, and Paramount initially hedged its bets by signing its new discovery on a one-picture deal. Nevertheless, Dietrich had a lot to live up to. She had arrived in California as a rival to MGM's Greta Garbo, who had moved on from silent triumphs with John Gilbert to an equally triumphant transition to the talkies in Anna Christie. Dietrich's new employer, Paramount, was the most continental of Hollywood's major studios. And it was at Paramount that von Sternberg was to direct Dietrich in a series of remarkable movies. The first was Morocco, a Foreign Legion adventure in which Dietrich toyed with Adolphe Menjou and Gary Cooper before chasing Coop into the desert. Von Sternberg made Dietrich the enigmatic centerpiece of an artificial world illuminated by exquisite lighting and the director's genius for pictorial composition. In Shanghai Express, Dietrich was cast as Shanghai Lily, her face unforgettably framed by Lee Garm's Oscar-winning cinematography. The movie and its cast inhabited a China of von Sternberg's mind. It's a private world in which the director and the camera are there to worship at the shrine of Dietrich, or at least the Dietrich imagined by von Sternberg.
Why is he tied up?
I'm going to present him with a small token of my esteem.
You don't dare harm him. You promised to return him.
I didn't say in what condition. Captain Harvey, if I were you, I'd mind my own business.
That's exactly what I intend to do.
Von Sternberg maintained his grand illusion with top lighting, which threw Dietrich's superb bone structure into relief and also disguised a lumpy nose, later remolded by plastic surgery. Dietrich supplied the style, particularly the men's clothes she wore with such insolent panache. The Dietrich look was to make cross-dressing fashionable, but only Dietrich knew the secret of carrying it off while remaining intensely feminine. Von Sternberg was not content to worship his creation from afar. He and Dietrich became lovers, but Marlene was unwilling to remain with a single partner. She loved both men and women. The visual poetry she inspired in von Sternberg is her legacy to him and to us. In The Scarlet Empress, von Sternberg cast Dietrich in a blaze of white fur as the depraved Empress Catherine of Russia. In their last film together, the 1935 The Devil is a Woman, she was a nun turned nymphomaniac. The movie was set in so outlandish a fantasy of Spain that the Spanish government of the day lodged a formal protest. Paramount withdrew the movie, but only after it had failed at the box office. It was the end of one of cinema's greatest partnerships. Neither Dietrich nor von Sternberg ever recaptured the rapture of the 7 movies they made together at Paramount. Other directors tried to rekindle the flame. In Desire, Ernst Lubitsch turned Dietrich from a femme fatale into a light comedienne. He enlisted the help of Gary Cooper, her leading man in Morocco.
Will you kindly let me handle this alone? Now, I'm telling you...
Don't be so.
Whose niece is she? Your niece or my niece?
Whose car was it, your car or my car?
Now, let me tell you, my niece is more important to me than your car.
My car is more important to me than your niece. Well, I don't know.
I wasn't sure if I liked you enough. I still don't know.
In 1937, Dietrich traveled to England and Denham Studios to make Night Without Armor for Alexander Korda. Her co-star was Robert Donat, and her fee nearly $500,000.
Countess Alexandra Vladinov.
Daughter of the minister, betrothed to Colonel Dietrich. Countess, we congratulate you. Colonel Dietrich is a very lucky man.
To be shot.
No.
But I want to be shot. I hate you all. I despise you. You're red vermin. Long live Russia. Long live the Tsar! When did you fall in love with me?
First time I saw you.
Get up, I said. Get up.
You turned, and I was lost.
Dietrich now seemed a beautiful but overvalued asset. When Paramount discovered that she had slumped to number 126 at the box office, they bought out her contract. She was off the screen for 2 years, until she played Frenchie, the feisty saloon bar queen in Destry Rides Again. The boys in the back room loved Marlene, but it was a long way from the Scarlet Empress. Dietrich's falling star had taken her to Universal, where she was soon to meet the cowboy hero whose star was in the ascendant, John Wayne. The story goes that Marlene first spotted Wayne loping through the studio commissary. She eyed him up and down and then told her companion, director Tay Garnett, "Oh, Daddy, buy me that." In fact, Wayne, fresh from his stagecoach triumph, had already been lined up by Universal to co-star with Dietrich in 7 Sinners. Before filming began, Dietrich invited Wayne to her dressing room, locked the door, and lifted her skirt to reveal a watch fastened to her upper thigh. She told Wayne, "It's very early, darling. We've plenty of time." The door remained locked. It was not long before the romance between Wayne and Dietrich was the talk of Hollywood's chattering classes. Marlene introduced Wayne, whose salary was still only $400 a week, to her business manager, a Swede by the name of Bo Roos. The press pursued the couple around Hollywood's night spots. Marlene, whose natural domesticity belied her image as a femme fatale, cooked for Wayne and brought his meals to the set every day. The couple went to the beach and at weekends sped out of Los Angeles to relax in Montecito and San Luis Obispo. This was hardly music to the ears of Wayne's estranged wife Josephine, and eventually torpedoed their marriage. Equally miffed was Douglas Fairbanks Jr., who had been sharing Dietrich's favors with writer Erich Maria Remarque. At a movie premiere, Dietrich playfully gathered for the cameras Wayne, Fairbanks, Remarque, Rudolph Sieber, to whom she was still married, Jean Gabin, another lover, and girlfriend Mercedes de Acosta. Seven Sinners was the best movie Dietrich made with Wayne, but still seems like a campy reprise of magic moments with von Sternberg. In a remake of that old warhorse, Rex Beach's The Spoilers, Wayne and Randolph Scott were rivals for Dietrich's affections. And they slugged it out again in Pittsburgh, with Scott carrying off the prize, on celluloid at least. For Dietrich, Wayne's physical attractions were self-evident. Fairbanks provided sophisticated companionship, Remarque intellectual stimulation. But Wayne's third wife, Pilar, put it differently, years later, when she observed that Dietrich had been the first person in the movie industry, with the exception of John Ford, to take Wayne seriously. According to Pilar, she made Wayne feel like a man again, both in bed and on the soundstage. Sadly, Dietrich was not so generous in later life, recalling, unfairly perhaps, that Wayne was a dullard who merely used her to hike his salary. Without von Sternberg's adoring hand on the tiller, Dietrich was unable to relax and became increasingly stiff and mannered. Her performances toppled into self-parody in movies like Kismet, in which she was painted gold for a dance sequence and romanced by Ronald Colman.
Charlie.
I arrive home. I am desolate. In my palace there is a corner I call the Garden of the Stars.
I like that.
There I sat night after night with my astrologers. They're a stupid lot. They don't know anything about women.
But you do, my prince.
There never was another woman in the world I couldn't forget but you.
World War II came to the rescue of Marlene Dietrich. She could send herself up if it boosted morale.
Reach for the sky, you coyotes. It's me, Dead-Eye Dietrich, the sheriff.
Cheapers, it's the arm of the law.
The legs ain't bad either.
Gee, ma'am. Ma'am, you're wonderful. Are you the sheriff?
Yes, I'm the sheriff, but forget that I'm a woman.
Forget that you're a woman?
Yes.
Is she kidding? So you're the sheriff, huh? Well, tell me, what's your racket? What's your angle? What's your phone number?
At home and overseas, Dietrich's personal war effort won universal praise. In the 30s, Hitler had tried unsuccessfully to woo Dietrich back to Germany. But in 1937, she became a US citizen, and in the war years worked tirelessly for Uncle Sam. The boys in the back room became the boys in the front line. Wowed by a kiss from Marlene Dietrich. In the war years and after, John Wayne's battlefield exploits were preserved on celluloid. Some were gung-ho actioners, but movies like John Ford's They Were Expendable, co-starring Robert Montgomery, were honorable exceptions. And it was with Ford that Wayne made the director's celebrated Cavalry trilogy, the first leg of which was the 1948 Fort Apache, co-starring a treacherous Henry Fonda.
Colonel, if you send out the regiment, Cochise will think I've tricked him. Exactly. We have tricked him into returning to American soil, and I intend to see that he stays here. Colonel, Thursday, I gave my word to Cochise. No man is going to make a liar out of me, sir.
A year later, Ford followed Fort Apache with She Wore a Yellow Ribbon. He brought the trilogy to a close in 1950 with Rio Grande.
You've chosen my way of life. Hope you have the guts to endure it.
May I also put something straight?
Proceed.
I'm not in this post to call you father. I was ordered here as Trooper Jefferson York of the United States Cavalry.
It was in later movies like Ford's The Searchers that John Wayne revealed his depth. playing a lonely, obsessed man betrayed by his own stubbornness. By the time he made Ford's The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, Wayne was established as one of American cinema's archetypes.
That's my steak, Valance.
Well, you heard him, dude. Pick it up.
I said you, Liberty. You pick it up.
Wayne had become an American landmark, like one of the massive buttes in a John Ford Western. His own monumentality later prompted this tribute from an old friend, Ronald Reagan.
He was the personification of an American ideal. He portrayed heroic individuals who were willing to take a stand, men with courage and conviction. He represented the type of person most Americans deeply admire, the kind of person whose character withstood the perils of the frontier and the savagery of war. We would like to think that he reflected the kind of individual to whom we owe our freedom.
In her own way, Marlene Dietrich was equally monumental, her outline as instantly recognizable as that of John Wayne. They represented an old Hollywood whose household gods were, one by one, falling away. In 1961, she and Wayne attended the funeral of Dietrich's first Paramount leading man, Gary Cooper. Wayne stayed the course, picking up an Oscar in 1969 for his performance as Rooster Cogburn in True Grit. He had seemingly subdued cancer in the 60s, but it returned to afflict him in the following decade. With the help of his loving family, it was an illness born with great courage, humor, and humanity, qualities which even Wayne's detractors were forced to acknowledge. No one who saw it will forget Wayne's lanky walk down the Oscar staircase in April 1979. Within weeks, John Wayne was dead. In her later years, Marlene Dietrich's stage and cabaret career still caught her in the top-lit spell first cast by Joseph von Sternberg. In rare moments, she's said to have whispered to his vanished presence, "Where are you, Joe?" Marlene Dietrich died, a recluse, in her Paris apartment in 1992. Dietrich's romance with John Wayne in the early 40s was a remarkable union of Hollywood opposites. It provided Wayne with a shot of professional and personal self-confidence, but the enigmatic Dietrich later distanced herself from him. Like John Wayne, Marlene Dietrich achieved the status of movie icon. But after her triumphs with von Sternberg, Dietrich's talents and intelligence were often misused by others and by herself. But she teases and tantalizes us still, in photographs and on screen.
My husband was a military man, all his life. He was entitled to a soldier's death. He asked for that he should be permitted the dignity of a firing squad. You know what happened. He was hanged with the others.
John Wayne's appeal is universal. The harshness of his middle years later mellowed into a gentleness and humor that sometimes catches his audience unawares.
I can't swim.
How old are you?
6.
Not even a thank you do I get.
Maybe you're right, Stumpy.
Huh?
You're a treasure.
Well,
I don't know what I'd do without you.
Yeah, well,
And the mood of his later years was caught in True Grit.
My God. She reminds me of me.